Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on pharmacovigilance requirements for UK authorised products. My name is Sophie Radica and I'm a pharmacovigilance inspector at the MHRA, and I will be chairing this webinar today. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items just so you know how to participate in today's event. First of all, this webinar will last for around an hour and 45 minutes, and it will include a short break. I will discuss the webinar format in more detail shortly. And in terms of the content that will be covered, our presenter and panelists will present and update you on the approved guidance current as of today. This webinar is being recorded, and the link will be sent out to delegates to access the recording once it is available. Please be advised that the recording will not include the question and answer session. Moving on to the questions itself, in order to submit a question to the panel, you will need to log into Slido. Please submit and upload questions on Slido using the code PV2021. And we will address questions after we have presented on the guidance. We have grouped your questions that were submitted during the registration process for this webinar, and we'll answer these first, and we will then work to answer questions that have been submitted to us today in a similar aggregated way so that we can answer as many questions as possible. Please bear in mind that we will prioritize those questions that have not been addressed in the content of today's presentation, or which may require clarification based on what is coming in on Slido votes. Please also avoid resubmitting the same question if it is already raised on Slido, and instead use the upvote function by liking the question that is already on Slido. That will just make it more efficient for us to go through the questions. If you have any technical questions relating to the GoToWebinar platform or connectivity issues, please direct them to our technician via the GoToWebinar question function. If you have a question that has not been answered as part of this webinar, we recommend that you get in touch with our Customer Services Center or contacting your trade association, which is also working to answer questions. The MHRA has provided trade associations with FAQs which can help address queries from their members. Right, next slide, please. So coming back to how this webinar will run, we will start the webinar with a presentation from Anna Adams, who is a Senior Pharmacovigilance Inspector, and she will provide further information about the pharmacovigilance legal framework in the UK now that we are no longer part of the EU and no longer operating in the transition period. And after the presentation, we will take a short break before moving on to the questions and answer session of this webinar, for which we will be joined by colleagues in the MHRA Vigilance and Risk Management of Medicines divisions for questions on core pharmacovigilance processes. And we also have a colleague from the clinical trials unit for questions on the submissions of SUSAs to the MHRA. The focus of this webinar and the question and answer session will be on the pharmacovigilance requirements as described in the Human Medicines Regulation Part 11. So we won't be able to address any specific questions on the requirements relating to the wider life cycle of medicines. We know that we may not be able to cover all questions in the time available, but we will be considering how we can ensure responses are provided either by reflection in further guidance or through industry associations as well. And with those introductions completed, I'm pleased to hand over to Anna for her presentation.
Thank you, Sophie. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. So today I'm going to talk about the legislation, as Sophie says, that applies to pharmacovigilance in the UK and the statutory guidance that's available to support the application of legislative requirements. So this will include the exceptions and modifications document that we recently published, and I'll talk through how you can use this document. I'm also going to give some more guidance on the requirements and expectations for the UK PSMF, the QPPV for UK authorised products, and the national UK contact person for PV. And finally, I'll give you some information about the MHRA Pharmacovigilance inspections programmes. I won't be going into technical aspects of the actual conduct of pharmacovigilance activities. However, as Sophie mentioned, I'm very pleased to be joined by colleagues from our Vigilance and Risk Management of Medicines division who will be participating in the Q&A panel session after this presentation. And they'll be able to answer those more technical questions. So let's start at the legislation. The majority of you will have hopefully been at our previous webinar and will be familiar with the legal basis of medicines regulations in the UK post-Brexit. But what I'll do now is just run over the basics to give you the context for the PV legislation that I'm going to talk through. So now that the UK is no longer part of the European Union and the transitional period is over, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency is the UK's standalone medicines and medical devices regulator. So what has changed? The MHRA has published detailed guidance on how medicines and medical devices will be regulated. This also takes into account the withdrawal agreement that has come into force. Great Britain, so that's England, Wales and Scotland, will operate to an initial legal framework that incorporates EU legislation into UK law. However, the UK regulator, the MHRA, will be able to take sovereign regulatory decisions in Great Britain to help evolve the UK legal regime to meet future UK needs, and to take regulatory decisions that will apply directly in Northern Ireland, so long as these decisions don't conflict with the EU decisions, while the Northern Ireland Protocol applies. Underpinning all of these actions is the UK government's commitment to ensure that there will be no impediment across the UK to securing access to vital medicines, particularly and including vaccines at this current time. So the legal framework for UK authorised products is still found in the Human Medicines Regulations, the HMRs, which I'm going to be referring to quite a bit during this presentation. These have been amended to incorporate changes as we have left the EU. So initially, an amending SI was made, ready for us to leave the EU with a no-deal outcome back in March 2019. After we didn't leave at that time, further work was carried out to address the aspects that weren't fully covered in those initial amendments and ensure that the HMRs were complete. These were included in a further amending SI, which was made in October 2019. We left the EU, if you remember, with a withdrawal agreement on the 31st of January 2020. And during the 12-month transition period that we've just finished, further changes were needed to make the regulations accommodate the withdrawal agreement. And this required some of the no-deal changes to be retracted, where certain EU elements had been needed to be reinstated to allow for compliance with the Northern Ireland Protocol. So this amending SI was passed just in December. The HMRs can be found at legislation.gov.uk. Ensure that you're looking at the current version by clicking on the latest available revised button here. And to see the changes that have come into force to the section that you're viewing or related sections, you can expand this green box. Just note that the version that I have on this slide was at the time of when I put these slides together, so it doesn't show those 2020 updates for the piece of legislation that was passed in 2020 in December. So let's take a quick look at the MHRA licensing regime changes in the UK that have been created to allow for the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. So we have UK-wide licence, which authorises the products for sale or supply in the whole of the UK. This is the UK PL, and this covers Northern Ireland and Great Britain, England, Scotland and Wales. Other MHRA licensing routes have been created to allow compliance with EU requirements under the Northern Ireland Protocol. So these are the Northern Ireland Only Licence, PLNI. This is used where Northern Ireland is considered a concerned member state in a European decentralised or mutual recognition procedure. And note that, in addition, the GB only licence. So this is PLGB. This is used for previously centrally authorised products, CAPs, that have been automatically now grandfathered into national licences. So just to note that these are GB only, as the EU CAP, so any products authorised centrally in the EU are still authorised for sale and supply in Northern Ireland under the Northern Ireland Protocol. But I won't be covering PV legislation for CAPs today, because the MHRA is not the licensing authority for these products authorised centrally in the EU, these products continue to be completely covered by the EU legislative framework. So the GB route, PLGB, is also used for the assessment of any new applications for authorising products for sale and supply in Great Britain that are also authorised in Northern Ireland by EU routes, as well as any applications under the MHRA innovative licensing and access pathways. So these are your types of products that under EU law must be authorised in the EU through the centralised procedure, so things like biologics and vaccines, for example. Unfettered access for sale and supply in Great Britain will also come under a PLGB licence. There's a lot more information on these licensing routes on our website from our licensing division, and much more than I'm able to speak to. But in short, this is why it matters. The licensing route matters for PV legislation because for UK nationally authorised products, these are all licenses granted by the MHRA. Part 11 of the Human Medicines Regulations, the HMRS, that describes the legal requirements for pharmacovigilance applies. Underneath that, further details on the legal requirements are found in Schedule 12A of the HMRS. But this schedule is applicable only to GB only MAs, that PLGB licence, as under the Northern Ireland Protocol, the EU Commission implementing regulation still applies for all products authorised under a licence that allows for sale or supply of medicines in Northern Ireland, i.e. those PLNI licences and the UK-wide PL licences. Sounds very complicated, but I have some good news for you. The good news is that these requirements are essentially mirrored. So what we've done is we've lifted the PV requirements in the Commission implementing regulation and put them into Schedule 12A of the Human Medicines Regulations. So in practice and in general, if the PV system is compliant with the Commission implementing regulation, then it will also comply with HMRs. So now I'm going to talk a bit about statutory guidance. You should all be familiar, hopefully, with the EU GVP Good Vigilance Practice modules. In the Human Medicines Regulations, it states that this guidance, the GVP, will continue to apply in the UK for UK authorised products. However, it also says that should the MHRA determine where aspects of GVP no longer apply or need to be modified, that we need to publish these exceptions and modifications, which is what we have done now with our exceptions and modifications document that was published on the 24th of December. I'm going to talk you through how to use this document, because instead of just rewriting the whole of GVP and showing what exceptions and modifications apply in the whole of the document in that way, which would be a mammoth task to rewrite, and also would require a lot of duplication, as much of the concepts in GVP do continue to apply in the UK. We've only published the aspects where requirements in the UK diverge or where the EU GVP no longer applies. So the scope of this document, the exceptions and modifications document, therefore, broadly speaking, is for UK nationally authorised products. So those are licences issued by the MHRA. And so in general, it's not applicable to centrally authorised products, which are still subject to EU legislation. So I will run through 6 key principles as to how the document works. These are described in much more detail in the document's introduction. So when you do have a look at that document, start with the introduction and really get familiar with how to use it from that. But I'll just run through some key principles. And then I'll show you an example to help illustrate these principles a little bit better, so a bit of a practical example. So firstly, at the start of the modifications and exceptions to each GVP module, chapter and annex, there is a summary section, and this outlines the key differences with the EU GVP modules that you need to be aware of for PV in the UK. Secondly, legal references that are specific to the UK have been added where needed, and these will be things like the relevant parts of Part 11 and Schedule 12A of the Human Medicines Regulations. Number 3, the document clearly states if specific sections in GVP no longer apply to UK MAHs or to the UK Licensing Authority, the MHRA. And number 4, there are parts where specific paragraphs have been modified, and the modified versions are provided in full as replacements for specific paragraphs. Number 5, there are sections of GVP that do continue to apply exactly as they are in GVP, EU GVP. So these are therefore not included or replicated in our document. Finally, there are some general changes that apply throughout, and for these, they have been documented for each module, chapter and annex where applicable. So hopefully with an example, this will become a bit clearer to you today. The best way to use the document is to look at it side by side with the EU GVP module. So here I have GVP module 1 open and the corresponding section of their UK exceptions and modifications document. You can see how specific paragraphs that are being modified are referred to by a number on that document on the right hand side. We've got paragraph 2, paragraph 3. You'll notice immediately that paragraph 1 isn't mentioned in the UK document for this section, and that's because it continues to apply in full. There are no modifications to it at all. So digging into that a bit deeper. So on the right here, I have the exceptions and modifications document open. Firstly, you can see that summary section where key changes from EU requirements in GVP1 are highlighted, including the requirement for a QPPV for UK authorised products and a contact person for PV to be in place in the UK should that QPPV be based outside of the UK. Secondly, you can see where UK legislative references have been inserted. In this example, there are no sections that no longer apply, but that would be specified here. And number 4, there are replacements for specific paragraphs. So paragraph 2 has been modified, and the updated version of this text that applies to UK authorised products has been written out in full. So that's a full replacement there. Paragraph 3 has extra text added to it to incorporate UK requirements. So paragraph 3 applies as it is in EU GVP with this additional extra part added to the end of it. As we noted on the previous slide, paragraph 1 isn't mentioned, and that means it continues to apply in full as it is in EU GVP for UK authorised products. And lastly, you can see there are general changes. There's a statement in the summary at the start that calls out that throughout this module, any reference to the competent authority should be changed to the licensing authority, and that's the MHRA. So to preempt a question that some of you may be submitting currently on Slido, I can confirm that yes, as new versions of the published EU GVP modules are made effective, in turn, we'll consider how any of these updates impact on the UK, and we'll update this document accordingly. So moving on to the PSMF, and this is something I know many of you have had questions on. I can see them popping up on Slido already, and what I can hopefully provide a bit more information about. So taking it right back to basics, what is the PSMF and how is it used? Why do we have PSMFs? GVP Module 2, as modified for the UK, states that the content of the PSMF should reflect the global availability of safety information for medicinal products authorised in the UK, presenting information on the pharmacovigilance system applied at global, regional and local levels. It goes on to state that the PSMF shall describe the pharmacovigilance system and support and document its compliance with the requirements. As well as fulfilling the requirements for a PSMF laid down in the legislation and guidance, it shall also contribute to the appropriate planning and conduct of audits by the applicant or marketing authorisation holders, the fulfilment of supervisory responsibilities of the QPPV, and of inspections or the verification of compliance by the licensing authority. PSMF provides an overview of the pharmacovigilance system, which may be requested and assessed by the licensing authority during marketing authorisation applications or post-authorisation. So there's a lot going on in a single PV system, and I've very crudely depicted this in the schematic on this slide. But the PSMF needs to provide an overview of this whole system. So I've broken down the UK requirements into 6 key principles. Firstly, per Part 11 of the HMRS, the Human Medicines Regulation, all UK authorised products legally need to have a PV system, and this PV system must be described in a PSMF. So the scope of what I'm talking about today is this legally required PSMF that describes the PV system for UK nationally authorised products, those licences that have been issued by the MHRA. So we can call it from this point the UK PSMF. Don't forget, and I've seen this in some questions that have come in, that all EU CAPs will continue to be covered in the EU PSMF under EU legislation. So that's out of scope from these UK specific requirements for the UK PSMF that I'm talking about today. PV is a global activity. If your product is supplied in other territories around the world, your PV system to collect relevant safety data and to manage and analyse that data will likely be a single system that's applied globally and used for all products regardless of where they're authorised. It's this potentially global system that is used for the PV of products authorised in the UK that we're talking about being described in the UK PSMF. So I'll go into where any UK specific information is needed in a couple of slides' time, but we're looking at the global PV system applied to local products in the UK. There is a legal requirement that this UK PSMF that describes the global PV system for UK authorised products is accessible electronically in the UK at that same legally required location at which ADR's adverse drug reaction reports can be accessed. If, as inspectors, we turn up at this address to conduct an unannounced inspection, for example, we would expect, per this legal requirement, to have access to the PSMF as well as to the ADR reports at that location. It's rare that we do conduct an unannounced inspection, but we can and we will do where there is sufficient reason to do so. The requirements for the format and the content of the UK PSMF are aligned with those in EU legislation. If you recall earlier, I mentioned how we lifted the requirements from the Commission implementing regulation and inserted them into UK law in Schedule 12A of the HMRS. This includes those requirements for the PSMF. So where do you look to find the right requirements to follow? The legal basis is found in different legal texts. However, the requirements in both are aligned. So for products authorised in respect of Northern Ireland, so your PL UK-wide licences and your PLNI licences, it's found in the Commission implementing regulation. And for products authorised in respect of Great Britain only, PLGB licences, the legal basis is in Schedule 12A. Any requirements to make specific information for UK authorised products available in the UK PSMF and annexes has been stated in our exceptions and modifications to GBP document, and these apply to all UK authorised products. So we expect the main body of the UK PSMF that you submit to us on request to be relevant to UK authorised products, i.e. it describes the organisation, the PV processes, the quality system, etc. that's applied to those UK authorised products. Likewise, the information in the annexes to the PSMF for UK authorised products should be relevant and specific and contain only information relevant to those UK authorised products. So the audits, the contracts with partners, the metrics, etc., only relevant to the UK authorised products. So the big question, which I've seen has already received some upvotes on Slido, and one that hopefully I can answer here, is how to put this together in practice. Companies who have products authorised in both the UK and the EU will need to maintain two documents, but it may be that the PV system that you apply to your UK authorised products is essentially the same as that for your products authorised in the EU, in which case many sections of the PSMF main body can be interchangeable between the UK and the EU PSMFs. The cover page of the UK PSMF will need to include the unique UK PSMF number. Section 1 on the organisational structure of the MAH needs to be specific to the UK organisation, including the UK QPPV. And as previously discussed, the annexes do need to be specific and relevant only to UK authorised products. So to summarise those key points, it's a legal requirement to have a PSMF that describes the global PV system applied for all UK nationally authorised products, and we can call it the UK PSMF. The UK PSMF must be accessible electronically from the same location in the UK from which ADR reports are accessible. UK legal requirements on format and content of the PSMF are aligned with those in the EU. The main body of the PSMF should be relevant for the UK authorised product it covers. The annexes of the UK PSMF should be relevant and specific to the UK authorised products it covers. And many of the main body sections may be interchangeable between the UK and EU PSMFs. We have already had some questions submitted before the webinar on how to register the UK PSMF. So I'll very quickly walk through that now. If you have UK authorised products, you need a UK PSMF. And this needs to be registered with the MHRA. But to do this, you must first obtain a PSMF number, your UK PSMF number. If you are a marketing authorisation holder, MAH, or an applicant for a UK marketing authorisation, you'll hopefully have already registered with MHRA submissions, and you'll recognise this page on this slide. This is the same portal where you can obtain a UK PSMF number. So when you enter the Human Medicines tile, you'll find a tile called Obtain UK PSMF number. And here you fill out a form. It's very straightforward with basic details of the PSMF in order to obtain that unique PSMF number. This includes things like the name of the MAH or the MAHs involved in the PV system. So all UK authorised products require a UK PSMF, and all UK PSMFs require a UK PSMF number. Because of this, we are expecting a large volume of requests for UK PSMF numbers. So we're asking that you request one either when you're about to submit a new application for UK marketing authorisation, and you'll need this number to include in the summary of the pharmacovigilance system, or when you've changed the person who is acting as QPPV for UK authorised products from whomever was in that role as of the 13th of December 2020. The reason for this is on this date, we took an extract of all PV system details from the EU Article 57 database to use as a baseline set of information to enable us as an inspectorate to determine the PV systems in the UK that were in scope of our inspection universe. From this time on, any changes to the QPPV details in the information in that baseline data will need to be notified to us via the submission of a variation, and I'll go through this on the next slide. But at the time of submitting that variation, you'll need to include a UK PSMF number, so you'll need to request one first. PV systems aren't always tied to a single marketing authorisation holder, MAH, and one MAH may have more than one PV system. So it's for this reason that we need unique numbers assigned to each system so that we can identify all the PV systems that cover UK authorised products and link this information to each product licence in our own systems. So you'll be submitting the information on your PV system, including details of the QPPV responsible for UK authorised products and the UK PSMF number, to us at some point before the deadline of the 30th of June 2022. For a new application, it will be part of the summary of pharmacovigilance system that you submit. But for existing licenses, Type 1A variations can be submitted with this information, either if the QPPV for UK authorised product changes or before the deadline on the 30th of June 2022. More information on how to submit this variation in batches for multiple licenses at a time can be found on our website. And here is just a diagram to give an overview of that deadline. It's worth adding that any licenses being grandfathered to GB licenses, so those PLGB from centrally authorised products, CAPs, these will be converted by the submission of the initiating sequence. And this has to be done by the end of this year. That's that orange arrow there. Only once this has been submitted to create that PLGB can the details of the PV system, so the UK PSMF number and the QPPV, be added to the PLGB licence through the submission of Type 1A variations. So I've mentioned the QPPV for UK authorised products. This is another topic we've received many questions on, and I want to provide some more clarity about this role. But I also want to provide some reassurance that it's not actually such an unfamiliar concept. So what is the role of the QPPV? It really doesn't change from that of the EU QPPV, someone who is appropriately qualified, permanently and continuously available, and residing and operating in the UK or the EU EEA. The new part here is that there must be a QPPV who has responsibility formally for UK nationally authorised products. This person can reside in the UK or the EEA, and we've done this so that a QPPV who previously had responsibility for UK authorised products in the EU PV system can continue in that role. but some organisations may wish to appoint a new QPPV to oversee the PV system specifically for UK authorised products now, and they can be based still in the UK or in the EU or EEA. If the QPPV responsible for UK products is not based in the UK, we just need a contact point who is based in the UK for any immediate inquiries. So this person needs some form of reporting line into the QPPV. We don't mean that they need to be line managed by the QPPV, instead simply that they have access to act as a conduit for information sharing, and that they have access to the PSMF and the ADR reports at that stated site where they should be available from. So this is a legally required role if the QPPV isn't based in the UK, but there is a 12-month period to put this person in place when needed, and you have until the 1st of January 2022. If you do need to appoint a national contact person for PV in the UK, you must notify the MHRA of their contact details, and these are also submitted through the MHRA submissions portal. So when you enter the human medicine section, you'll find a tile called National Contact Person for PV. And here again, you just fill out a simple form with the details of the national contact person, and that's registering it there with the MHRA. So lastly, I'm going to talk about pharmacovigilance inspections. In this area, it really is business as usual, as we continue to inspect the pharmacovigilance systems for products authorised in the UK in accordance with a risk-based national inspections programme. As shown in this excerpt from the Human Medicines Regulations, we have legal powers to inspect against the UK legal PV requirements, and where relevant, i.e. for products authorised in respect of Northern Ireland, the corresponding EU requirements. In practice, we'll be inspecting the compliance of UK marketing authorisation holders with UK PV legislation. So that's part 11 of the Human Medicines Regulations. And as part of this, we'll look at compliance with the more detailed legal requirements in the Commission Implementing Regulation for products authorised in respect of Northern Ireland, including UK-wide, and in Schedule 12A for Great Britain only licences. And as I've said earlier, the requirements of Commission Implementing Regulation are largely mirrored in Schedule 12A, so this is not as complex as it may first seem. We'll also be verifying compliance with Good Vigilance Practice GVP modules, including the published exceptions and modifications for the UK. The scope of the programme for our inspections does include centrally authorised products, but we will not be a supervisory authority for PV inspections under EU legislation. We do understand that there are some new requirements and changes for PV, and we're keeping this in mind for our first view inspections this year, now that the transitional period has come to an end. If you are to be inspected early on, while you're still developing processes to fulfil the new requirements, we'll discuss with you any ongoing updates that you have in your system, and we'll take this into account. Essentially what I'm saying is don't panic over the next few months if you are scheduled to be inspected by us. If you've been complying with EU requirements, you'll be in a very good position in any case. We're going to continue with our risk-based approach to build our inspections programme. So that's looking at product risk, products with emerging safety profiles, including ongoing post-authorization safety studies, the complexity of PV systems, including complex risk management systems, complex organisations, so those with very large portfolios, for example, and also inspection history or those with compliance risk that we might have come onto our radar through other sources of intelligence. So my overall aim for today was to reassure you that although there are some administrative changes needed, The overall concepts behind the setup of your PV system, the QPPV and the PSMF, remain the same in the UK. It's now that the legal obligations require these to be focused in the UK on UK authorised products. So in summary, what you need to know about PV legislation in the UK: where different legislation applies, for example, the Commission Implementing Regulation and Schedule 12A of the Human Medicines Regulations, the requirements are mirrored. UK specificities that apply to all UK authorisations are detailed in the GVP Exceptions and Modifications document. There needs to be a UK PSMF that is specific and relevant to the PV system applied to UK authorised products. And there needs to be a QPPV who is responsible for the pharmacovigilance of UK authorised products. And lastly, the MHRA will continue to inspect PV systems for all products authorised in the UK. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will pass back over to Sophie.
Thank you. So we will review any questions that we have not been able to answer today, and will further update our published guidance as necessary. If you have any further questions, please, in the first instance, refer to our website, where we have published guidance as well as a recording of the previous webinar, which took place in October last year. If you're unable to find a response to your query from the published guidance, please contact the MHRA's Customer Service Centre, where your query will then be directed to the appropriate department to answer, and the contact details of our Customer Service Centre are also presented on this slide. And also, as I said at the beginning, you may also wish to contact your trade association in case of any further questions. So thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. After this webinar, you will receive a survey on the webinar, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email in due course with the access to the recording of Anna's presentation. And on behalf of all the presenters and panelists, thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.